Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here on my next Star Wars comic review. This one's going to be for Star Wars Kanan, The Last Padawan, issue number 8. Though I suppose at this point they're only calling it Star Wars Kanan, not the Last Padawan. I suppose because this story actually takes place kind of during the Clone Wars, so it's not necessarily needing that title. But yeah, this is continuing the story from last issue, which is where we went back in time and we were covering basically how he became Depa Bilaba's Padawan, and we get that in this issue. Obviously, last issue set up this idea that Depa Bilaba was badly injured during her last mission in the Clone Wars. She just barely survived. Basically, all of her troops got wiped out, and a lot of the other Jedi, a lot of the other Padawans, or like younglings like Kanan or Caleb at this point in time, I think she's kind of dangerous to be around. That she's not quite all there yet. It wouldn't be really good to go with her as her Padawan because she's dangerous. She's just going to get you killed. This idea that she kind of has this aura around her now because of what happened. But where we start here is basically we go back to like the present day. This kind of weird story where Kanan has returned to Kalar and he got injured, and they're kind of setting up this idea that like it's touch and go whether he's going to survive or not. He really needs to regain consciousness soon, and then the rebels are getting surrounded outside and something's going to happen. So they seem to be doing somewhat of a kind of continuation from issue number 6, that there's going to be a present day story, but as it's happening while Kanan's unconscious, he's kind of remembering the events that brought him together with Depa Bilaba. But in terms of our backstory, we left it off basically with explosions in the Jedi Temple. Kanan and Depa Bilaba were talking. They happen. She saves him from the explosion, and they're kind of wondering what's going on here, which is at the point where we cut to basically find out what exactly this attack is, what's going on, and it's of course it's by the Separatists. But the interesting connection they make here is that one of the people leading this attack is General Cleve, who we've met before. He ended up kind of helping out Kanan towards the end of the first arc of this series, and they seem to be setting up that, okay, he's been involved in Kanan's life for a little bit before that, which is meant to add a little bit of extra depth to it. I still don't really get what they're going for with his character, and that I don't think he's that interesting, but he seems to be more of a even though he like is for the Separatists, he doesn't necessarily agree with like his commander at this point in time, who's like going a bit overboard with some of this stuff. He doesn't quite agree with this plan. It's a bit overboard, so you can see he's a bit more of a reasonable type guy. So interesting enough to see where they go with General Cleve. I don't think they'll do anything that notable. So there's that. Just it's a nice connection to have, I suppose, that even though Kanan wasn't involved in many battles over the course of the Clone Wars, that there was this General Cleve who was kind of involved in a lot of them, so they kind of know each other a little bit. But yeah, then we just cut to like little shots over the whole Jedi Temple as like obviously they're defending from. It turns out the person attacking them is an explosive expert, so he has all these kind of tracking bombs that are going around, and the Jedi have to like slice them up to stop them exploding. And we get a shot of Sin Drolig, which is pretty interesting as a character. He's obviously meant to be the kind of lightsaber expert. Like, he focuses on that. He trains a lot of the younglings and is just this master of Jedi combat. And the interesting thing here is that in the movies he's played by Nick Gillard, who is the coordinator for lightsaber combat in the prequel. So a lot of what we know as lightsaber combat comes from him, because the originals, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff to go into in depth with the lightsaber combat. So it's pretty cool to get to see him and some of the other temple guards in action there, trying to stop all these bombs. And Depa Bilaba and Caleb, being far enough away from everything else, being closer to the blast than anyone else, have the best chance of like finding the guy doing this. And so you know, you have Depa Bilaba talking about how she's healed but she's not whole. She thinks she could become a liability out there. She's not very confident that she can do what she needs to do. And Caleb, of course, wants to impress her because he kind of wants to become her Padawan. And so he decides that, like, he thinks through, like, okay, they're primarily attacking, sending the bombs on the bottom. But we know that there was an explosion nearby that just came fairly recently. So I'm going to go up through the vents and potentially find this guy. And he goes off on his own, and Depa Blaba doesn't kind of agree with this. But he finds the guy on the rooftop, and this guy just kind of talks about how he wanted to fight the masters, and his mission. He doesn't want to include killing Padawans, kids, on his mission, and so Caleb fights. He's only using like a training lightsaber and stuff like that, and eventually he's basically about to get killed by all these bombs that were thrown at him when Depa Blaba arrives and stops it, and like there's one bomb that he throws that's about to kill Caleb, but she stops it by using the Force to keep the two liquids that, when put together, make the explosion. She stops them with the Force from actually kind of joining together and stopping the chemical reaction. And that's like a really cool thing that she does, showing how strong she is with the Force, that she can do that. And there is another explosion there, which basically results in the guy having to reveal himself properly. He's kind of stuck there with them. He has to fight his way out. He reveals that his name is Rackham Seer of the Quarzite, and he says he's the captain of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, which is obviously like the separatist movement. And he has these interesting kind of electrified blades, and he attacks Depa Blaba, but her lightsaber just slices through them. When I first saw this, I thought maybe they're going for some sort of thing where he can actually block lightsaber attacks, but he can't. He seems to do some sort of like suicide bombing thing after that point, just to do as much damage to the temple as possible, and just jumps off, kills himself. Depa Blaba saves Caleb again, but they stop most of the damage being done by using the Force to kind of keep him up in the air rather than falling to the ground and killing some of the Jedi below, fighting off the other bombs. And then on the ground, they're resting after this really crazy incident. Basically, she just says, it seems I'm in desperate need of a Padawan in order to continue my journey. And he's kind of, oh, she's offering me the chance, and he's like, yeah, I'm honored to do this, but then she says, oh, but you're too young, and he's like, oh, I understand. But then she says, but times being what they are, the Republic needs you nevertheless. And basically, this is how he becomes her Padawan. They're interrupted by Mace Windu and Obi-Wan arriving to see if the whole thing is over, and then you cut to, I think the following day, and then he's talking to his two friends, the other trainees he was sparring with in the last issue, and he just says that, so you're her Padawan now, and they're worried about him, that you're not safe with her, you're not ready to be a Padawan yet. They really have no happiness for him whatsoever, having become a Padawan, and stuff like that. And then Depa Blaba just reflects that, even the young Padawan thought her something, showing that none of them are perfect. And then you just get this kind of cut to Caleb going on his first mission, and he reveals that Master Blaba took me to get his Kyber crystal for his new lightsaber. He has that now. I assume it's the same lightsaber he has in Rebels. We don't get a look at it just yet, but we assume that's the case. And they're going to a planet called Cardoa, and it's Balaba's first mission since her recovery, and Caleb's first mission full stop. And they're going to rendezvous with Master Balaba's newly assigned battalion, led by the survivors of her previous one. Their names, Commander Gray and Captain Styles, and I know we'll be great friends. So they're kind of setting it up that we know what happens with these. These are the two guys that Order 66 activates. They kill Balaba, and they became friends with Caleb, and suddenly that turns it, and that kind of starts this kind of whole thing with the people around Caleb kind of end up kind of betraying him somehow, and starts that kind of his on the run stuff like that situation. So it's a pretty cool reveal at the end that okay, this is the first time he met Commander Gray and Commander Styles, and us now knowing what they do in that they both go under Order 66, and obviously because of that they're not fully aware of what they're doing, and they had faith in her, and obviously one of them ends up kind of redeeming themselves and stopping basically killing the two of them to save Caleb in a previous issue. So it's interesting what happens here. I don't think it was the most exciting issue of the comic so far, in that like we obviously get the events that lead to him becoming Balaba's Padawan, but the scene where it happens is just kind of so weirdly done that it's just like, oh no, you're too young otherwise, but no, actually, because we're in battle, I actually need you right now. I find this actually more interesting from her point of view than his, in that he's just enthusiastic and wants to become a Padawan, but she is in this situation where she doesn't feel like she's completely capable as a master, and she feels like having him around would actually help her, and that she's learning things from him because of his enthusiasm, his need to always question everything and stuff like that. So it's interesting that, like, in many ways I find Balaba the more interesting of the two at this point in time, even though the series is called Kanan. So I'm interested to see where they go with this. Obviously, this mission isn't the one that eventually leads to Order 66, but we know from the first couple of issues that Caleb doesn't go on that many missions in the Clone Wars before Order 66 happens. Like, we're fairly deep into the war at this point in time, so this is potentially like the mission before everything happens. And they set up that the next issue is going to be an encounter with General Grievous, who I believe they set up in the previous issue was the person who outmaneuvered Balaba in her last engagement and led to the death of basically all of her troops, apart from Gray and Styles, and her injuries that she suffered. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here. Obviously, it is going to lack something because, like a lot of the Clone Wars episodes, we know Grievous doesn't die here, but if there is some sort of a big victory and like Caleb helps Balaba kind of turn things around on Grievous, that would be a cool moment for him, and that he adds this kind of tactical element to her that she doesn't quite have with all his questioning. I'd actually like if they did something like that, and maybe force Grievous to retreat like he always kind of tends to do. So they could do something interesting next issue. I suppose seeing Kanan on his first mission, his first proper lightsaber fight they seem to be setting up just based on their cover tease. It'll be interesting to see what they do there, but in general, there's some interesting stuff going on. I really still question what they're going for with the present day stuff. Setting up that Caleb's kind of Kanan's dying at this point in time, and what exactly they're trying to do on Kaller, and this setup with like characters like Jaller, Cleve, and all this sort of stuff. That's what I'm not so sure about. The kind of present day stuff, the stuff that linked more into his time after he fled after Balaba's death. I'm not really sure where that's going, but the backstory was good, not amazing, so solid enough issue. We're 8 issues in now. I'm eager to see where they go from here, and that, like, I assume they're going to cover ground until we basically lead up to the start of issue 1, and then they'll switch to some other story, which I'm not entirely sure what they're going to do after that. Like, is the series going to end there or what? So either way, fun issue. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the issue if you read it, on my review, of course. Other than that, thanks for watching the video, and bye.